Why does it feel like rest is not helping anymore? You're doing all of the right things, you're doing all of the self care, you're taking breaks, and yet you're still feeling burned out. If you've ever woken up after a full night of sleep, still feeling exhausted, feeling a little bit drained, and almost dreading the day, you are not alone. When new clients first come to me, they realize they've only been given half of the truth about recovery, and that hurts. What if the problem isn't you, but the problem is this whole idea of what quote unquote rest is supposed to be? When we're tired, we know we need sleep, right? I am a huge advocate for power naps. You know, I love my power nap, and it is really powerful for me. But outside of that, we are very often taught to ignore our bodies. And I've had many experiences of ignoring my body. I grew up in Wisconsin. I'm still in Wisconsin, and Wisconsin has a really strong tradition and culture of drinking. It's beer, brats, and cheese. I also grew up with my parents owning a bar. And so drinking was a part of my life. And I also have a mother who wanted to make sure, especially the men in the room, didn't feel like they could outdo her. And I really embrace that, which I think is a great thing. It's not great to embrace when it comes to wanting to be better at drinking. I remember several times, especially going to college, when I wanted to prove that I was the better drinker. Part of that might have also been the fact that I went to school in Michigan. So I had to prove that everyone in Wisconsin was a better drinker than anyone in Michigan. And so oftentimes I would ignore my body and I would take more shots. I would drink more drinks just to prove everyone that I could handle my alcohol and that I was quote unquote better than them. I mean, obviously, I was in my early 20s, so we're not making smart decisions then. But here's the thing is then I would be hungover and a few days later, I would go do the same thing over and over again and really ignoring my body because when you're waking up hungover, that means your body isn't liking what you're doing to it. And how often are we doing that? Whether it's from alcohol, whether it's from food, whether it's from pushing yourself too hard, whether it's overworking yourself and you're not listening to your body, how often are we doing that? And we rest, we go to sleep, but then we wake up the next day and we're still not like our bodies aren't feeling very good, or maybe we're not even listening to our bodies. So often we get used to ignoring our bodies that we train ourselves to not even know what our bodies are trying to say to us because we can't even hear it anymore. It's this culture of no pain, no gain. And especially as a former college athlete, it was definitely no pain, no gain. We were pushed to our limits. And yes, there is times to be pushed to your limits. And it was also something that I was taught that if my body was hurting, ignore it and push through because without pain, there is no gain. And in some situations, that's true. But in many situations, especially in real life, we can have gain without the pain. We're also taught about self sacrifice, especially in religious or spiritual spaces. Sacrifice is something common that we hear and that we should be sacrificing ourselves for the betterment of everyone else. And yes, there are times we need to sacrifice. Of course, I would sacrifice many things for my child, my husband, my family, but that shouldn't be our go-to of I need to sacrifice every day. That if I'm not sacrificing, then I'm not giving enough. The no pain, no gain, self-sacrifice, hustle culture, we need to eliminate. I learned to treat my body as a problem to overcome, especially women. We're taught we need to be smaller. And I also learned that my body is a tool to be used and not a partner to be listened to. And that's especially when I dove into my trauma sensitive yoga certification. I really realized I want to be a partner with my body. I don't want to fight against my body, and I don't want to see my body as a tool because it is a sacred, beautiful thing that I'm very thankful for. And so often we don't think of our bodies in that way as a partner. And it can be especially hard for people with chronic health issues and different health issues as well. But the more we can lean into our bodies being our partners, the more we can work through the burnout that you are experiencing. You can rest all day, but if you're ignoring what your body really needs, nothing is really going to change. So if rest alone isn't the answer, what is actually going to work? Oftentimes, leaders, caregivers, business owners, you feel like you have to do it all. And that often backfires. And oftentimes, when you are starting a grassroots movement, you're starting a business from scratch, you do have to do many things on your own. And we should be thinking long term and how can we create systems so we don't feel like we're doing it all on our own all the time and that we don't need to. Because that was definitely a badge of honor that I learned, and I think we learn as a culture too, is like if I'm doing it on my own, I'm better than the person who has a team. And that's simply not true. Lasting wellness, your well-being, it really requires systems for you at home, systems for you at work, and systems culturally as well. And some of them you have control over, some of them we don't have control over. Part of creating the systems can help with making self-care not feel just like another chore that you need to do. Instead of it being something to do, it can become who you are. I often talk about being human beings versus being human doings. And this is one of those ways is who are you being? And embracing that and embodying it as this is who I am instead of something I just need to do to check off a checklist. By the way, if you're feeling way too busy for self-care, I made a list of 20 self-care habits for busy badass people that you can do in 5 minutes or less, and you can grab that for free in the description of this video or the podcast that you're listening to. So what can systems look like? Delegation. This could be at home, I delegate the dishes to my husband because I hate doing dishes. And sometimes I also delegate dishes because I work from home. And this is something I realized working from home for a while. And I got to a point with my husband and I said, can we just have this understanding that when you get home from work, there are going to be dishes out and that it doesn't mean I'm ignoring them. It just wasn't a priority for me. So maybe it's even delegating something to the later you. And that's a really simplified version of that. But for me, taking off this idea of like, I need to get dishes done during the day so that I don't have dishes on the counter when my husband gets home from work, that just relieves that stress for me. It's okay for me to leave dishes now because I'm delegating it to someone later, whether it's myself or my husband, even though it's mostly my husband. Setting up boundaries. Also, rituals, which I like to call rhythms. Rituals sometimes feel very rigid. I think a rhythm can feel like it ebbs and flows with your life. Offering built-in pauses. I love to use my phone for an alarm. I set an alarm for lunch every day now. And it's not only to eat, but it's also to go for a walk and move my body. It's also my reminder to listen to music, to move my body and dance because I love doing that. And that brings me joy and that helps me to be more creative. And it's really this midday reset that I love to do that helps me to then show up for the rest of the day as my best self and have energy and not feel exhausted and be excited about what is to come as opposed to just pushing through. No pain, no gain. It's time for me to take a break and do these things to support myself in order for me to have more gain. And then also external support. Part of that can be friends. Some of it could be people that you live with, maybe calling you out. If they're willing to do it and you're willing to get that feedback of, hey, if you notice me doing this, can you say something to me about it and give them the words to say? So for instance, when I was going through depression, anxiety, and PTSD, I was binge eating at night and I really wanted to change it. And so I got to a point where I said to my husband, if you see me eating at night, will you just check in with me and say, are you sure you want to eat that? And I gave him permission to do that. And that was that external support that I needed. And it didn't really take much from him, but that made a big difference for me. Because again, you shouldn't be doing this alone. Doing it alone is not a badge of honor. It is a recipe for burnout and for not creating long-term sustainable success that I want for you and the people that you're working with and for your mission. How do you know if you're really burned out or if you're losing connection with yourself? If you feel burned out, it might be something deeper. And if more rest isn't fixing it, click on the video on the screen right now, and I'll walk you through how to identify exactly what you're going through in your own unique situation. If there was any part of this video that resonated with you or made you think of someone, send this video to them and say, I thought of you. Feel free to leave a comment, like, and subscribe for more videos about this. And always remember that you are worth it.